Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Samurai Brothers Wrestling. This is podcast episode number 7. I am John, and I'm here with my brother Matthew. And this week we're going to talk about a few things, some events that happened over this past weekend, and talk about the upcoming events that are also going to be going on as we get closer to June, July, August, which is where the real, I guess you could say, the postseason for the freestyle Greco international season is taking place. So things like the World Team Trials are going to be happening soon. And we're just going to talk about, experiences with us going out to some of these postseason tournaments, Matthew. We've got quite a few memories about those, I would think. And so from there, Matt, we're gonna just kind of get into our first topic of the day, which was, as you remember, we talked about the showcase tournament sponsored by the United States Marine Corps that was taking place in Cedar Falls, Iowa. It was being run by USA Wrestling, and this was basically an event where the top talent in the country for high school and youth could get together to, I guess they call it a showcase, and it's to market out their talents to, universities and such. And so one thing I did notice, I'm not going to go too much into the results because the fact, we try to base most of our coverage of a wrestling based on California wrestling, because that's where we're based at, where we're from. I did see maybe a few people had signed up for the showcase tournament from California, but I didn't really see anyone was placing unless the club that they were wrestling for is based in California. So we're not too familiar with that based on, that we're trying to really get back into the game. But Matthew, I think just where we're seeing where we're at, I think we did see a lot more California wrestlers out at the Virginia Beach Nationals last week. So do you think this is more just, that they want to really go to that one? Maybe are they saving themselves for the US Open? Or do you think that a lot of the, probably the state placers from California, maybe they already have schools that have already contacted them? What's the difference in California participation in the showcase tournament versus the Virginia Beach tournament, or the fact that we didn't really see any really big names out this weekend?
Well, one thing that's very possible is the fact that the Virginia Beach tournament may very well be the more challenging tournament. That's quite possible. More people may want to do it, but then on the other hand, it's also quite possible that there might be saving for the U.S. Open, which is a little bit closer. So, and then there might just be the fact that some of them just might not be able to afford to go out there. Like
true.
We did see that there was a huge Bakersfield contingent, but you didn't see too many other schools out there.
Well, yeah, and probably you're right. Probably all banded together to go out there. If it was from Bakersfield or if it was from Orange County, we did see some Orange County wrestlers going out there too. But yeah, you're probably right in that 2 weekends in a row would be a very difficult one. But as we correctly predicted, people that were going to go to the Virginia Beach tournament did not go to the showcase tournament.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things where, I think you just have to pick and choose your battles. They could have gone, but I think the reality is, you've been cutting weight the entire season, and then you just did they had, some time down from their various state tournaments, and then they did this, and then they're just like, I don't think they're really in the the capacity. They're not really at this point probably not interested in having to constantly cut weight. So,
well, we do know for one thing is that there are also California Open tournaments that have been going on. There was one a few weeks back that they did for folk style, the California Folk Style Open, I think it was called, that is sponsored by USA Wrestling, and that seems to be that everyone in California gets together. And then I think in a couple weeks, I believe it is the weekend before the US Open, they will have the California Open, but that will be more for freestyle Greco, things like that. So there's also a possibility. I remember because I participated in that event a few years back, and normally you get everyone from California is going to go to that event a lot more than they might be going outside of the state, aside from the U.S. Open. Since the Open is, the U.S. Open is at Vegas, so it's a bit easier to travel to Vegas from California than it is to go from California to either Cedar Falls, Iowa, or Virginia Beach, right?
Yeah, and then that's like I said, I think these guys are just trying to pick and choose their battles because they don't have the school traveling budgets. They're essentially doing this on their own dime, and if like me, they didn't really have jobs outside of school, they don't have a whole lot of disposable income for stuff like that. So
I'll go ahead.
No, I was done.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna go through. I'll read really quick who were the winners of each division, at least for the boys showcase. That's the only real article I'm seeing on USA Wrestling's website. But just to give you an idea of who the winners were, in the 16U results at 88 pounds, you had Wyatt Lees from Team Donahoe Wrestling Club. 94 pounds, you had Dominic Munaretto from Toss 'em Up Wrestling Club. 100 pounds, Alec Rosas from WWC Predator Wrestling. 106, Quis Huerta from Empire Wrestling Club. 113, this wrestling club probably rings a bell, Matthew. Kellen Wolbert at 113 from the Askren Wrestling Academy. So, yeah, that definitely will ring a bell, considering.
Is that in Missouri? I'd like to say the I know they went to college there, but I can't remember what state they're specifically from.
Well, let me Google it right now just to make sure. But I mean, I think it's safe to say who the namesake of it is. And let me see here. So the Askren, the Lake Country Askren Wrestling Academy. And let me just make sure if they have. So they've actually, okay, so they've got quite a few. They've got quite a few academy locations, but it seems that they are all based in Wisconsin. So you've got Lake Country.
Oh, right, yeah, that's where they're from. They just went and wrestled in. Wait, does Wisconsin have a wrestling team?
Wisconsin, you mean in college? Or yeah, the Wisconsin Badgers. They're part of the Big Ten.
I wonder why they end up going to Mizzou instead.
You mean Askren?
Yeah. Well, remember the Askren brothers. The brothers were there was a younger Askren, not as well known, not as successful as Ben.
Yes. So at least on their website. Yeah. So on their website, they've got the Askren Wrestling Academy. There's 5 locations in Wisconsin. There's Lake Country, which the main contact is Ben Askren. They've got North Shore and Mequon, and that's headed by Max Askren. And then there's a few other places: Green Bay, Madison, and then Franklin.
I think that's probably one of those situations where it's like they're franchising it, so they're allowing other. Because that happens a lot with big name MMA gyms.
Right.
Well, we don't have a whole lot of exclusive wrestling gyms. Like, I have no idea if, like, for example, the Sunkiss Kids are franchised out. It's hard to tell.
Now, one thing I've noticed, especially around here, is how you'll have a lot of MMA gyms, especially in this area, and they will try to offer wrestling like classes or courses too. And usually they'll get people who were MMA students who then kind of went on and did, high school or college wrestling, and then coming back and doing, that sort of thing as part of that, MMA gym or something. I've seen that quite a bit.
You'd think that out here in the Central Valley, that would be the same thing, but a lot of the MMA gyms don't have wrestling specifically. And I was actually talking to one of the assistant coaches at West Hills who actually wants to change that. And something else I found out, there are a lot of MMA gyms in the Clovis area. I know, well, MMA gyms, but also wrestling center gyms, which would actually make sense considering it's Clovis. That's
Well, that would make a lot of sense as to why, Clovis can be, those Clovis area schools can be as good as they are because, hey, there's a place for them to go in the off season then.
Yeah. So, well, it's very interesting because, like I said, in the Clovis area, it's that way. But then, like I said, 40 miles south, there's nothing, despite the fact that there's a community college program in this area. But another thing though that would probably help out is the fact that there seems like Southern California is this very interesting place because you and I can attest there is a deep wrestling community, and just because of the population density, there's percentage wise just more wrestlers. So I think the MMA gyms are smart in that they know that if they want to appeal to those wrestlers, then they're gonna try to reach out to them and do stuff like wrestling classes. So I think it's very smart. It's very strategic.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Even with the size of the state geographically, when you have those densely populated areas, there's plenty of places for people to go in terms of, clubs that they can go to and such. I think sometimes the problem might be is just, when they're offering stuff, because like I've tried to, there's a club actually kind of a few miles away from where I'm at, but because of my job, and the work hours I have, normally a lot of times, like when you want to help out at a high school and stuff, they're normally going to do stuff that's, the practices are pretty much going to be after, when fifth or sixth periods, and what have you. And so sometimes if you're not really involved, like if you're not in education or something, if you're not working a job that's going to allow you to, go at those times, it's hard to kind of to help out.
Well, the thing is with the schools that have clubs, and those are definitely going to be the more successful clubs. They're when in the in the spring, they're still gonna do the clubs typically a little bit closer to school. Basically, how I don't know how aware of it you are, but typically during the season for the bigger schools, they're gonna separate their frosh soft and varsity practices, and they're typically gonna stagger them 2 hours apart. And the frosh off is going to be during the it's going to be during what's it called it's going to be during sixth period into I think about 4 like 2 or 3. It's been so long since I've done since I was in high school. But then after the 2 hours, you've got the varsity who come in and they do their stuff too. So typically it's gonna the clubs are going to be scheduled during the theoretical varsity hours. Now, unless it's unless you're talking about what's it called? Unless you're talking a club that's kind of already established there and they kind of do their own thing, they might have later hours. Like if you're talking like a year-round club that will concentrate on the youth, the kids that aren't, that can't, something like that, then then they'll have later practice hours. But typically, yeah, the club is closer to the after school hours, so that the kids can go back home and they can shower and eat and then and do their schoolwork.
So before we get into continuing on with this, so one thing I noticed, Matthew, when I was trying to put my list together of All-Americans for all the college tournaments this past season, I noticed. So you've got the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is the Wisconsin, and they sponsor wrestling at the D1 level. One thing I noticed is that there are 5 other Wisconsin campuses at the D3 level, at least 5, that sponsor wrestling. And I'll read them off to you. They are Wisconsin Platteville, Wisconsin La Crosse, Wisconsin Eau Claire, Wisconsin Whitewater, and Wisconsin Oshkosh. And the only reason why I was able to find this out was because I was putting together that D3 All-American list. And so you had All-Americans from all 5 of those campuses placing top 8. To me, I think that's amazing that, hey, you've got these campuses doing that, for that, because then at least, they can all be wrestling stuff. And my thought is, well, why can't the California campuses out here do that too? There's no University of California schools that sponsor wrestling. And then the only 2 Cal State. What?
Davis was the last one.
Right. Davis was the last one before they were dropped. So then the only 2 Cal State University schools are Bakersfield and Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. They're the only 2 schools in the Cal State system after Fullerton dropped their program. So, you would hope that things could turn around. Hey, maybe there are some, I don't know which of the, Cal State and UC schools, if they compete at D2 or D3, but probably for all we know that they're all at D1, considering that a lot of them.
San Francisco State has a D2 program.
You're right. Yes.
Well, to me, it's amazing though that they still have that program going throughout all this chaos with all the all the programs getting dropped and everything, and then programs like Cal Baptist starting up and then going up, and then Simpson College starting a program, Life University starting a program, Vanguard starting a program. With all this chaos going on, you've had a constant. Well, actually, you've had 2 constants: Menlo and San Francisco State. They've just both been sitting up there in the Bay Area, consistently producing wrestlers, and there was no talk about them dropping their program. None.
Yeah, and I know for a while also, for a while it was, it was tough for Southern California kids to have to decide. It's like, are they going to go up the coast, upstate north to either, are you going to go to the Cal State schools? Are you going to go to Menlo, San Francisco State? Or are you going to go out of state? And, a lot of the good kids, they'll end up going out of state because they're probably going to have more opportunity out there. They'll probably know that they'll get better out there because the California schools wrestling level wise really can't compete when compared to, you know, the further east you go.
Well, like for example, like for yeah, that like for example, that was something I had to do. Like Cal State Fullerton still existed when I was there, but I knew for a fact I wasn't going to get in there. So I had one of two options. If I want a scholarship, I would have to go back east. And at the time, there were talks about Cal Baptist starting a program, but that never. But that happened a year in, and I'll tell you, I thought briefly of, should I go back home? Ultimately, I think it was the better decision to stay where I was. But we were also talked about, well, if you don't get any scholarships, you can wrestle at SAC for a year and learn under Silva. And if Cal Baptist starts a program, you go there. So there was it was one of those things where kind of had to choose your battles. But
yeah,
but it's like like however many years after, at least a decade, Vanguard starts their program. Just like, man, I would have gone to Vanguard. If I'd had the option, I would have gone to Vanguard if they would have had me.
Yeah, it's kind of 10 years. 10 years is a little too late, but it
Yeah,
is what it.
Yeah, 10 years, and there's
But
a college wrestling at the 4-year level returned to Orange County. But there's also a lot of other options now. Like, for example, in Arizona, you had Embry-Riddle, their aeronautical university. I'm not going to go to aeronautical university. I wasn't that smart. But Arizona Christian also started a program. So it's just, there's a lot more options now. It's like, if I was unfortunately just in this in-between time where the timing was just bad. If I'd, come out, if I'd been born several years later, then there would have been that opportunity to possibly go to Arizona Christian, Cal Baptist. There's just so many other options now. Life University started before Vanguard did in San Dimas. There's a lot more options, and that's good for the sport, obviously. But it's one of those things where it's just like, well. But it's also a good thing because it just goes to show that in those mid-lower levels, there's the possibility of expansion.
So let me just finish up with reading off the winners of the showcase. So the U16 division, 120 pounds, Manuel Saldate from Gold Rush Wrestling was your winner. 126, KL Seaton from Big Game Wrestling Club. 132, Alex Braun from Minnesota Elite Wrestling Club. 138, Kane Nat Gaborin from Big Game Wrestling Club. 145, Leo Contino from the Empire Wrestling Club. 152, Bradley Rodriguez Little from Minnesota Elite. And let me see here. 160, Anthony Reinhardt from Contenders Wrestling Academy. Here we go. So I was wrong. I didn't see this. 170, Adrian Reyes. Looks like he wrestled unattached, but he was from California. He did win the 170 16U division at the tournament. Then you had at 182, De Al Capone VZ from Legends of Gold. 195, Melvin Whitehead, Gold Rush. 220, Kai Calcutt from Toss 'em Up. And heavyweight Wayne Schmidt from Illinois. And then you had the junior division, which is typically, you're 18 under. And that's, I think that age group also, I think is the same in freestyle, but I could be wrong. But I think that's your 18 under group. So 100 pounds, Jaden Rinkin from Immortal Athletics. 106, Coulter Burton from Team Idaho. 113, Everest Sutton from Matt Sense Wrestling. 120, Garrett Rinkin from Immortal Athletics Wrestling Club. 126, Robert Balin from the Empire Wrestling Club. 132, Sam Sutton, Ironclad. 138, Regino Reyes from the Empire. 145, Caden Kaiser from South Dakota. 152, Israel Moreno from Sudden Victory Wrestling Academy. 160, Austin Scott from the Cyclones Wrestling and Fitness. So that's probably Iowa affiliated. 170, Hunter Hobbs, Team Idaho. 182, Hunter Jones from Ironclad. 195, Robert Plimpton from Oregon. And 220, here's another one. Mark Marin, the third, from Wrestling Unattached from California. And then your heavyweight winner on the junior division, Paul Clark from Bulldog Premier Wrestling Club. So it looks like there were 2 wrestlers from California. I don't know that I recognize the names, but I'm sure if we were to probably do a search, see how they did specifically at the state tournament, we could probably find that out. Anyway, so that is the results from the showcase tournament, at least for the boys division. So then, Matthew, I want to kind of get into the Bill Farrel International Tournament that did take place at the same time. It was a separate, it was considered a separate event from the showcase tournament. Now, the showcase tournament also did have the Masters division, which you and I kind of joked. I don't know if we were joking about it or if we're going to be serious about it. Maybe trying and doing the Masters division next year out there if we're willing to go out to Sears Fall. But we could always go and do the U.S. Open next year. They do have a Masters division for that too.
An interesting, kind of an interesting tidbit that trivia tidbit that I came across. Do you know who one of the people who was so crucial in developing Masters Wrestling as we know it today?
And who would that be?
John E. DuPont.
The DuPont?
E. DuPont, yes.
Well, as tragic as the circumstances surrounding him.
He also developed the concept of a wrestling club, essentially. I mean, Foxcatcher was essentially the prototype of modern American wrestling clubs. All the other clubs that were based off of it, the spin-off Dave Schultz Memorial, Sunkiss Kids, Hawkeye, I can't remember if it's WC, but all those clubs were the prototype was Foxcatcher.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, sometimes stuff will turn up in ways you never thought of, but that's an interesting trivia.
That's just one of those things where it's like, it's like for regardless of, I don't know if they still have the Team Foxcatcher documentary on Netflix, but it's like you watch that or you watch the Foxcatcher movie with Steve Carell, which Steve Carell did do a pretty good job. I don't know if I mentioned this, but watching his portrayal versus watching actual footage of DuPont, it's just like, well, Carell, you did a good job, but at the same time, there's just like there's you could just tell that behind those eyes, there's an insanity that just cannot be replicated.
I did get to watch the 30 for 30 documentary on ESPN. I don't know if that's the same documentary specifically, but I know that there was a lot of when they talk about the fact that Dave Schultz didn't really see the dangers behind how unstable DuPont was. And he was willfully ignorant, or he just wasn't observant enough. At least from the way that they presented in the documentary, is that he was willfully ignorant of how bad, you know, DuPont was, and he was trying to be a friend of DuPont, you know, because DuPont was making, you know, their success possible, you know, given that he gave them the facility, he was giving them the money, the sponsorship money for being able to travel and do events and things like that. And DuPont was really wanting to, you know, share in that and that success too. But, you know, just the fact that DuPont's mind was, you know, unstable and such was just a really unfortunate turn of events that, you know, in the end, we know that, you know, it cost Dave his life. And at the same time, there were a lot of those guys that were, you know, when they were there and they were seeing just how, as time was going on, just DuPont was getting more. I think it was, I don't know if he was getting worse. I don't remember if it was schizophrenia or something, you know, because he was starting to hear and see things that just weren't there.
Yeah, he was like having his guys, like he was having like observation people come in and, you know, listen in the walls. Like he was thinking that there were people spying in the walls and stuff like that. And
right.
He had some aversion to the color black. And we'll just leave it at that. There was just so much going on in there. Well, either way, you know, the paranoid schizophrenia didn't, you know, change the conviction at all. You know, in the documentary that I watched, Schultz's grown children talked, and his daughter said that, you know, when they heard that DuPont had died, she was just like, she basically was like, there's nothing to celebrate, because some, you know, she was asked if they were happy about it, and she was just like, there's nothing to celebrate. This guy killed my dad. This guy killed my dad, but you know, he's what is there to celebrate? Oh, here's a very, very weird request. He requested that he would get buried in a singlet. DuPont, and he was buried in a singlet. His Masters. Well, that's another thing. He actually competed in Masters tournaments.
Right. You know, in that 30 for 30 documentary, they would, you know, Dave and him had like a wrestling match and stuff, and you know, and obviously, you know, Dave kind of like went easy on DuPont so that DuPont could like be shown, you know, winning, getting his hand raised and all that stuff. And but yeah, you know, he would creep out the other guys, and you know, it apparently, you know, if I haven't seen Foxcatcher the movie as a whole, but you know, there would be times where DuPont would actually bring a gun to practice
into the room.
Into the wrestling room, and he would shoot the gun, and you know, and you know, I think of course, obviously, if you have that going on today, it's like that, you know, whoever would do that would just well, first off, you know, you wouldn't be staying around if someone's bringing a loaded gun and shooting it off in the wrestling room. But you know, so I think the Foxcatcher story, you know, at the end of the day, is a cautionary tale of who, you know, you're gonna take money from, and you know, that's just my opinion on it. And you know, people can say whatever.
Oh yeah, it is a cautionary tale. I mean,
when you look in hindsight, you know, people can have various opinions. You know, people will probably have various opinions about, you know, what Dave, Mark, and the other guys, you know, had to do in order to be successful and stuff. And you know, you just you know, and nowadays, you know, it's to the point, you know, USA Wrestling, or just, you know, the way things are now, so that it doesn't have to, you don't have to have another casualty like that. You know, obviously Dave was, you know, the best of the best at the times. Just when you hear the stories about how he really worked himself up, he was not a successful wrestler from the start, but it's just that he goes out there, being the successful NCAA wrestler, and then being a successful world and Olympic wrestler. But yeah, I think just where that goes, and hopefully we won't ever have to deal with that again.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those things where that whole incident kind of undercuts DuPont's contributions to
Right.
the sport. Well, and something else I should note, in the documentary I said that that's on Netflix. They said that USA Wrestling, towards the end, they'd basically had enough and they were going to basically withdraw because they'd made so many concessions to DuPont, but there was a point where they're just saying this guy's off his rocker. We need to. So what? But like I said, because of all the money that they were getting, they were pushing it off. Who knows if they'd done it earlier? If maybe Dave Schultz would be alive now. I mean, it's really hard to tell, but it nowadays with the structure being a little bit better, if they would have. It's like they would have said, okay, this guy's nuts. We can't have this.
Oh yeah, and nowadays you're gonna have a lot more corporate sponsorship. Whether it's Nike, Adidas, or Cliff Keen. Some of these places they're gonna provide. They'll provide, equipment or something. And then a lot more people are gonna provide, spaces and stuff. So, there's obviously, like you're saying, there's good and bad stuff that's come out of this, and again, it's a learning that particular part, as far as the Foxcatcher tragedy, I think would go is it's a learning lesson that hopefully we can all take from that and just move forward and just see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Okay. So
anyway,
talk about the US Open or the
So I was just want to point out about what they called the Bill Farrel Memorial, and so again, apologies to our audience. I'm not too familiar with who Bill Farrel was, but we will be more than happy to probably discuss him in another video. Like we'll probably discuss the, I think going through and discussing a lot of the accomplishments of great individuals in the past will be something. But anyway, so I just want to go through and Math, I'm going to go through here and we'll see. I'll go through who the, we'll just really quick. Let me screen share because I will show who the, it looks like on the first day, they, on the first day, they did the Greco-Roman and women's. So I'll just kind of share that really quick. So, okay. So can you see the screen? So where are we at? I think, okay. So this was the Greco-Roman results. The winner was Max Nori at 55 for Greco, and Matthew, I think as we discussed, Max Nori, I think he was the Olympic wrestler at this weight class at Tokyo last year. So he went out and won that. So my understanding, at least from reading through on the USA Wrestling sites, is that this particular event is a qualifier for the World Team Trials. So now, does that mean he qualified here? I don't know. They do have down below on this same page, though, they will have who qualified for the event. So I'll just read through here and we'll see what we have. Dalton Roberts was the winner at 60 kilos for WCAP. And then 63 kilos, Sam Jones from, I got to imagine that's New York. NYAC. So then we are getting up a little bit. 67 kilos, Alejandro Sancho. At 72, Patrick Smith from the Minnesota Storm. And 77, Ravon Perkins from NYAC. At 82 kilos, you had Ben Provisor, who looks like he wrestled unattached. 87 kilos, you had Richard Carlson from the Minnesota Storm. And then 97 kilos, Nicholas Boykin from SKWC. And then 130 kilos, you had Tanner Farmer from the NYAC. I think Tanner Farmer, does that name kind of sounds familiar to me.
It does, but I can't really
Yeah, can't really place where we heard that name, but he does sound familiar. So we'll have to
we had a Marine in there at heavyweight.
Yeah. Well, that should not be surprising. A Marine at heavyweight.
What do you mean? Marines are not normally known for being heavy guys.
Well, I mean, depending on how tall they are, because they build them up and stuff, they're usually going to be between, I would think, 180 and 220 pounds at least, right? And for all we know, he might not, 130 kilos isn't necessarily going to be, like heavyweight at, well, I guess it is. Okay. But, he could be.
I imagine this guy being like a Shane Yates.
Yeah. I mean, 97 kilos, that's what? 97.
For those of you, let's illustrate. Shane Yates was for a time an associate pastor at our church, and he had wrestled I know he wrestled in high school. I can't remember if he wrestled through college, but he was a behemoth. He was 6'6"?
Very tall.
He was a tall guy, and his son Travis was starting to become the same way. And his son Travis was actually able to get a scholarship at a D1 championship division school.
Yeah, he was a football player. Anyway,
but yeah, he was a bit. Well, and now he runs a what's it called, retreat. He runs a first responder.
It's like a wounded warrior project.
Yeah. I think they renamed it Task Force Heroes because the Wounded Warrior Project started having issues, so he switched to his affiliation to another charity. But the point is, he's a big guy.
So 97 kilos is 213 pounds. 130 is 286, but I would imagine he's probably like 240, 250. This Courtney Freeman.
He's probably a mid-range big.
He's not gonna be like 280 because that probably doesn't fly. But anyway, so it says here. Now here's this note below for the Greco. All champions except Boykin qualified for the 2022 U.S. Pan American Championships team. So apparently that's different from the actual World Team Trials. I was reading somewhere, and I'll get back. We'll get back into it in a later when we're gonna talk about the World Team Trials and such. The Pan American is actually a qualifying event for the World Team Trials as far as the U.S. is concerned. So I guess, there's qualifying against to get to Pan American, and then Pan American is used as a qualifier. So if you place at the Pan Americans, I got to imagine that then you're going to qualify for the World Team Trials.
Is the Pan Americans an open tournament? I thought that it was like the world. I thought that it was like the World Team Trials where you only sent one representative per nation.
Yes, that's my understanding. So looking at this, that must mean that these all of these wrestlers are going to represent the U.S. in Greco at the Pan American Championships based on this result. That's what it seems like. Now, does that mean that these guys are going to wrestle? They may have like a first, second, and third. You know, I think like they've done it before where they have alternates, right? I think that's how it's.
They have at least one, but they might have like 2 or 3 depending on the weight class.
I mean, it says that they qualified. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to represent. But so again, how that works out, you know, we'll have to find out. So with that being said, at women's, you had 50 kilos. Emily Shilson from Titan Mercury Wrestling Club winning that division. 53 kilos for women's. You had Sage Mortimer, who was the only person who signed up for that weight class.
This is an interesting tournament.
Yeah.
Because look at all these look at all these weight classes. And it's supposed to be a big tournament for qualifying for the Pan Am Championships, but
and also, you know, and then depending on the division, also qualifying for the World Team Trials. But, you know, it may be because a lot of other people have already qualified that you're not going to have the top wrestlers coming out to this tournament because.
Yeah, why wrestle in a tournament if you don't have to?
I mean, because I'm seeing that Max Nori up above. When I was looking at the list, which we'll talk about shortly, he's already qualified for the World Team Trials, but he decided to go out there and wrestle. Maybe just want to get some practice in, you know. Let me see here. 55 kilos women, Alicia Hawk from SKWC is your winner. 59 kilos. I think this is Hokkaido. Moda Pettis. I don't know how to pronounce this, so my apologies. From Rise RTC, she was the winner of that. At 62 kilos, Andrea Schlabach from GVWC. 65 kilos, Nina I think it's Macom from TCRTC. 72 kilos, Ari Naylor from Georgia had a bye. She was the only person signing up. 76 kilos, Precious Bell from Titan Mercury was your winner there. So all the people listed here are qualified for the World Team Trials in Greco and in women's, and this means that they get to wrestle at the World Team Trials. So I don't think these are people who had not qualified yet. So like, for example, Cole Smith, who, if we go back up here really quick, see, Cole Smith, who qualified at 55 Greco, was third place. So that's got to mean these two have already qualified for the World Teams Trials. If the only person qualifying at 55 Greco is going to be Cole Smith. So I think, Matthew, it looks like this was, you know, qualifying some of the other placers. If you medaled at this event, that means you did get to qualify for the World Team Trials. And especially when it came to, you know, like this person, Sage Mortimer or Ari Naylor, who, you know, they were the only wrestlers to sign up for their divisions. Like, hey, you go in, you make the weight. If you don't have an opponent, you're still going to go to the World Team Trials. I mean, couldn't get any better than that, right?
Yeah, I can't get any better than that.
Now, does that
that reminds me? that reminds me, when I was in high school, I was actually looking to sign up for a tournament. I can't remember which one it was, but I was looking to sign up for a tournament, and I noticed that there was only like several weeks out, there was only like 3 people signed up. I'm like, huh. Then within like 2 weeks, like 10 people signed up. I'm just like, okay, this isn't as easy a path as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I ended up not going to that tournament.
So anyway, so that is, that's the Bill Farrel Classic, or the Memorial International Tournament. That's the Greco and women's results. And then I want to go into, this is the men's results for freestyle. So let me see if I can find, okay, so here it is, freestyle. You had Zane Richards at 57 kilos from Titan Mercury as your winner. And then at 61, you had Tyler Graff from Titan Mercury. 65, you had Seth Gross from SKWC. Now, Seth Gross rings a bell. I think he may have been a world champion, or I think he was an NCAA All-American, if memory serves me correctly. He's been somewhere up there, and he may have qualified for the Olympics. I don't recollect where, but the name is very familiar. At 70 kilos, Tyler Berger, Titan Mercury. 74, Joshua Shields from SKWC. 79, Chance Marsteller from Titan Mercury / Annapolis. 86 kilos, Miles Martin from Titan Mercury / Scarlet Knight. And here's another opponent who really put in the work there, Matthew. 92 kilos, Nick Reenan versus nobody. And 97 kilos, Michael Machiavello from Titan Mercury / there's a name we're familiar with, Wolfpack. Haven't seen that name in a while. And then 125, Hayden Zilmer won over Dominic Bradley. And so your world team qualifiers, as I was reading the article up above, the 6 winners, you have the 6 winners at 6 of the winners in this particular division did qualify, plus a couple of second place finishers and third place finishers. So let me see here. Shields, Marsteller, Martin, Reenan, and Machiavello were the winners of their weight classes, and that qualified them for the World Team Trials. And also Graff at 61. So Tortoris was a second place finisher. Parker was a second place finisher, as well as Ashnault. And then Saren Francisco was the third place finisher at 125 pounds. So in total, it looks like you have 10 wrestlers that through this event qualified for the World Team Trial. So Matthew, it does sound like, though, even if you might have a tough time, it's still worth it to go to this event if that's going to grant you the chance to get into the trials, don't you think?
Yeah, and especially if you're literally just showing it. We need to research this tournament more, because the fact that here these guys they're coming in and they're weighing in, and they're literally just qualified for weighing in. It's just like, wow, this must be a very prestigious tournament, to where even though you don't wrestle, you're still qualifying.
Well, and one thing might be is that, again, it depends on how many people are showing up. Maybe pre-COVID times, maybe there were a lot more people showing up this tournament. Yeah, I'll do some research into how many people were actually wrestling at this event. Because I think the biggest weight class may have been 8, but a lot of these seem like that they were 5 and they were just doing a round robin, which, I would think even with that, hey man, if you're doing a round robin and you're getting to wrestle, 4 matches. I mean, I like round robins, it's like when you're getting to wrestle everyone, because that's a lot more. That's a lot more matches than you would get with just a double elimination tournament, right?
That's certainly true.
One interesting thing I did find in reading this article, Matthew, that I wanted to bring to your attention. So so this freestyle, the heavyweight wrestlers in the finals were, the guys who were wrestling for the finals were Hayden Zilmer and then Dominic Bradley. So Matthew, here's an interesting piece of trivia, is that both these wrestlers in their youth, at the 2007 Fargo tournament, they both won their divisions. So, 2007, and then in 2022, 15 years later, they're wrestling they're wrestling for gold at this particular event. So here's the real thing. So Dominic Bradley, when he won at Fargo, he won in the 275-pound weight class. So he was a pretty big guy. But Hayden Zilmer, when he won at the 2007 Fargo tournament, Matthew, his weight class was 84 pounds.
So he's become a big boy.
So
that's quite a gross.
Here it is, right here, Matthew. So 2007 84-pound Fargo champion meets the 2007 275-pound Fargo champion 15 years later in the final heavyweight bout of the night. And yes, so Hayden Zilmer, yes, he did grow quite a bit. When you're trying to wrestle in a 275-pound, that's and he's not fat. I made sure to look him up. He is not fat at all. And looks like he did wrestle. When he got out of high school and into college, he did wrestle for the University of Minnesota. So they were the ones who recruited him. But just, there's this whole thing about, hey, when kids grow, they can really grow, don't you think?
Yeah, the growth spurts that we've seen on some guys, it's just wow.
So which kind of reminds me of a funny story I heard when I was volunteering for table work at one of the Masters tournaments a few years back. And there was this coach who was talking to another official. I mean, he's a retired coach, so he was helping out with officiating instead of, coaching and stuff. And so he talked about this one kid who was like a 106-pounder, 113-pounder. He was getting really good and stuff, and he fought really hard. Don't remember how he did, but and the coach was, after the season was done, and he was this little scrawny little kid and stuff like that. And so this coach was figuring, okay, well, he's probably gonna grow a bit, so maybe the following year, he'll be like 120 or 126, something like that. He's mimicking the kid and stuff. Yeah, coach, I'll be seeing you next year and stuff. And so the first day of practice, the kid comes back and the coach, this retired coach, and he says, and I saw this kid, and the kid comes in and he says to me, "Hello, coach." and he had ballooned 50, 60 pounds. So he was now like a 60-pounder or something like that.
We're talking a short span of time, right?
We're talking a year later. Not even a year later, because you got your postseason's done in March, and then, wrestling season starts about, you start to get preseason stuff all rolling September, October. But hey, yeah, this coach is telling us, it's like, he comes in, he's all hulking. It's like, "Hello, coach." And "Hello, coach."
So he went from a boy to a man within like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, that's how, again, hey, if you're gonna normally you're gonna go up 2 or 3 weight classes. That's normal. That's a normal thing. But this kid was probably going to go up 6 or 7 or 8 weight classes or something like that. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of, Kyle Chenet, who, we kind of had a history with, and I don't think his brother even got that got as big as he did, but you remember Kyle Chenet, right? He rolled around at the mats at SAC. Well, he's from Irvine. The first time I meet him and wrestle him, he's a sophomore. He placed in CIF at 103 as a freshman. So we're meeting at this. I think I'm wrestling 125 at this tournament because with the what's it called, the
right,
the weight certification, I couldn't make 119. I still, this was my senior year. I still ended up wrestling 125 anyways. This was before my injury. So, he, like I said, we're both wrestling 125 and he places 103 at CIF and I place 119 at CIF, and somehow I was seated third and he was seated second. I think because he probably either finaled or placed second and then I placed, fourth. But I guess somehow at the seating meeting, they were able to justify putting him higher because he placed higher, whereas, wait, it's a different weight class. I ended up beating him. But, by the end of high school, he was like wrestling in the 140s, 150s or something like that. Solid guy.
Yeah, when he wrestled
he was bigger than his brother. And his brother was like wrestling solid in the 140s.
Yeah, when he wrestled the 1 year at SAC, he wrestled 141s was the weight class he wrestled.
Where did he end up going after
Cal
SAC?
Poly.
I know he went somewhere in the Midwest.
Cal Poly. You're talking about Kyle today,
okay,
right?
okay, never mind.
Yeah, Kyle went to Cal Poly, and I think the first year he was there, he did 49s, but I think he got as high as 65s. He got bigger.
Did he wrestle there all 4 years, or not 4 years, obviously, because if he did,
yeah, he wrestled all 3 years. I'll have to go back and check the results, but he didn't place high enough when it was the Pac-10s. He didn't place high enough to qualify for the NCAA.
Well, at least he made it to Cal Poly.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
that's like also how at least Mo made it to Cal Poly.
People get pretty big.
Well, an interesting thing about Cal Poly, a certain UFC legend actually went there despite his time in the UFC. He was known as a striker. His name was Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell was a true mixed martial artist because when he was younger, that's when he got into, I think, Kempo karate, became a black belt. But he also was good enough at wrestling to where he actually went to Cal Poly on a scholarship. So he was a true mixed martial artist. And he actually still lives in Cal Poly. He still trains lightly, but I think he still trains at the pit, which interestingly enough, I can't remember which occasion it was, with something to do with for those who don't know, our great uncle passed away like a year ago, and he was 2 years. Has it been that long? But he lived in Shell Beach, which is near San Luis Obispo. Anyways, I realized we stopped by a flower store and realized that's the pit. So I go there, but because it's the pandemic, it's closed. And I look in there and I think, this is where a UFC champion trained. It's a small, dinky little gym. It's not like some of these high profile gyms that I've been to, like a Extreme Couture or something like that. It's a small, dinky little gym. I don't even know if they even have a cage. And I'm just like, man, and this guy became a UFC legend training out of this dinky little gym.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a little story there.
So, let me see here. So then, Matthew, I kind of want to get into who's qualified so far for the World Team Trials. Now, this article I have from USA Wrestling shows who was qualified before this Bill Farrel event. So I'm gonna bring
And now we
that
just have
up.
more people qualify.
Yeah, so that means more people have qualified, but just to kind of to show you what we can see so far with this. So as of March 22, 2022, this is who all is qualified so far. Now, to give you an idea, so first you've got at 50 in the men's freestyle, 57 kilos. So you've got the World Team Trials has the challenge tournament, and then they have what's called the Final X, and the Final X is the best 2 out of 3 event, where you find out who's going to represent the U.S. at the at the World Championships, at some of the other events. So with that being said, so you've got who do we have here? So the thing about the Final X is that if you have done really exemplary at either like the World Championships or the Olympic at the Olympics, like you medal at one of those events, meaning you take gold, silver, or bronze, you're going to get an automatic seed to the Final X portion of the World Team Trials. Now, depending on how you do elsewhere, you could get an automatic semifinals seed at the challenge tournament. So, that can depend on how you did. So, the Final X qualifier, Thomas Gilman, who we know, he was. Now, some of this stuff, if it's the same person that is qualifying, then they're just listing based on their 2021 World Championships accomplishments versus how they did at the Olympics. Now, Gilman did get a bronze medal at the Olympics. I know that, but it looks like he was the World Championship at the 2021 championships and stuff. And Matthew, I think on my screen your thing is muted for some reason.
I intentionally did that because I didn't want people to hear me going. I'm dealing with allergies up here. It's the valley. It's spring. We've been having up and down.
Okay, so far, Matthew, looks like there's 8 people. Well, at least before the Bill Farrel tournament, there's 8 people that are qualified at 57 kilos. You got Gilman, who's advancing right to the Final X, and then you've got wrestlers who got as far as, it looks like they're seeding down to 4th place from the Olympic team trials. So you've got Vitaly Arujau, who I think he wrestled at the NCAAs, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, can you re-emphasize the Final X is the final qualifying tournament?
So the Final X is literally, that is the 2 people who are going to wrestle for that world team spot. That's what that means. So you've got what's called the challenge tournament first.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, I forgot. These guys get buys automatically.
Yes. Certain people will get buys depending on their accomplishments in past tournaments. Now, if you medaled at the World Championships, or in the case of the Olympics, you get an automatic spot in the Final X, best 2 out of 3.
And we had a weird year last year because we had the Olympics and we still had the World Championships.
Right.
But the World Championships was later, so that would have been the
Right.
criteria.
Right. Yes. So
The-
and then
wait, is the challenge tournament to get
so
to the final X?
yes, that's correct. So the final the challenge tournament is to get to the final X. Now
That's
in the
essentially the World Team Trial Tournament.
yes, it is. So one of the things that I know that
And again, I'm sorry. So not World Championship weights. These guys get to wrestle in the final X. Is that what happens? Or the World Trials Championship Tournament?
right, they wrestle in the challenge tournament. So actually, Matthew, to maybe clarify for you and for our viewers, so I want to go over really quick about how specifically you get to the World Team Trials. So I'll go over. So here's the criteria for free.
I should note that I don't know if I even knew this even when I was like, like really, really into wrestling, like when I was in a high school or college and I was like paying attention to stuff constantly. I don't know if I was ever as up to date, like knew this. So
here's how it works. So this year the World Team Trials Challenge Tournament will be May 20th to the 22nd at Corralville, Iowa, and that's for all 10 men's freestyle weights. So wrestlers who meet the following criteria will qualify for the World Team Trials Challenge Tournament, and that's to get to Final X, which is then the best 2 out of 3. So this event, which is going to be held in May, doesn't necessarily qualify you for the World Team spot. It just qualifies you to the finals, basically, is what that means. So from there, so then who qualifies? Well, criteria A is the top 4 finishers from the 2020 Olympic trials, which was held last year. So depending, that means if you were a top 4 finisher at the Olympic trials, you get to qualify. Also the top 4 finishers from the World Team Trials qualifiers, which I would imagine would have been a different qualifiers versus, from the Olympic trials. You also get the 2021 U23 men's freestyle world medalist. So if you were on that team and you got a medal at that event, then you're qualified for that. 2021 junior men's world medalist. So I'm gonna have to go back and double check, because there's so many divisions and stuff. It's like, so what do they, junior, I think means that I think it's like age 17 to 19 is what qualifies you for being a junior, in Olympic style wrestling, international wrestling, I think. I can never get the age group right for some reason. It's just, because you've got junior folk style versus junior freestyle. It's different categories for some reason. I don't know.
And then
why.
not to mention you had that time when you had the weird Espoir division that used to exist.
Oh yeah. What was it called?
It was called Espoir, and it was essentially a young adult division. Like I think it was like up to like 22 or 23 or something like that. Oh, then you have the university division.
Oh yeah, the university division. I would think that it's that it's U23 now, but it's okay. So you've got those.
It may be U23.
Okay, and then NCAA one top 3 placers qualify for the freestyle, and then you have the 2022 senior Pan American medalist. So if you medal at the Pan Ams, you qualify. The April 2022 Bill Farrel International highest placing U.S. athlete who has yet to qualify will earn a spot. So that means that so some of these guys at the Bill Farrel tournament, you'll notice again that they wrestled the 10 weight classes, And then some of the weight classes, you had the second place finisher qualifying, and the one heavyweight, weight class, you had the third place person qualifying, which means that the other two heavyweights have already qualified for the World Team Trials.
It sounds like some of these guys were just going in there getting some extra. You mentioned this, but it sounds like some of them were just going in there getting some extra wrestling in for the Bill Farrel.
And then also in category H, you're gonna have the top 7 placers at the U.S. Open, which takes place in Las Vegas, I believe later this month, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting about that is the winner of the U.S. Open will get the #1 seed at the Challenge Tournament. So they're pretty much in the semifinals of the World Championships. And then last but not least, it looks like they have in May, they'll have a Northeast Regional tournament, and that is whoever has yet to qualify, whoever places highest in that tournament will get to go. So Matt, with that being said, I'm going to go to so this is the updated list from according to Flow. This is the updated list after the Bill Farrel tournament happened. So again, you have Gilman, who is in the final X, and then at 57 kilos, and then qualified is second, third, and fourth at the Olympic team trials. Vito Arujau, Nathan Tomasello, and Zane Richards. And Tomasello, if I remember correctly, he was an NCAA All-American, was he not?
I think so. I can't remember what school he was.
Right. Yeah. The name rings a bell, and we'll have to go back and double check. And then you have the first and second placers at 125 at the NCAAs, which was Suriano and Glory, and then Michael Tortoris, who placed second at the Bill Farrel tournament. So then you go to 61 kilos. Dayton Fix was the World Championship silver medalist. So, a bit different result from his NCAA tournament, but, so that's a big advantage for him. And then you've got Carter Young and Seth Gross, who were the World Team Trial placers from last year. Roman Bravo Young, if you remember, he was the champion at 133 from Penn State, and DeSanto was third from Iowa, and then Tyler Graff was the Bill Farrel champion. So Matthew, I think did you have I know that I was updating you and Dad when we were watching, as the finals were going. Excuse me. Did you by chance have were able to watch replays of the RBY versus Fix matchup at all?
I did not.
Okay. So, RBY, he definitely knew what he was doing when, and he scored early on in the match, which was different from the finals that took place in 2021. But, I think as we've seen in the past, sometimes how good you are in collegiate and folk style doesn't necessarily successfully transition over to freestyle.
Right, because they're different styles of wrestling. I mean, the only thing in common are the takedowns, really.
Right. Yeah. The only thing common.
The scoring is different. The criteria is different. What you do on top or bottom is different. It's just, yeah.
So at 65 kilos, they do not have a person who advanced to the final X. So they're just going down the list. And it looks like, some results were different. They do have different placers from the Olympic team trials and the World Team Trials at 65 kilo freestyle. Jordan Oliver was the wrestler who qualified for the Olympics. Then you have Joey McKenna, Nick Lee, who we know from, the NCAAs. Yanni Giacomolis, who just won his third NCAA title. And in fact, he's still got a year of eligibility. So he's trying to become another four-time champion. So then you have a couple of world team trial placers, Evan Henderson, Luke Pletcher, and then Bo Bartlett, who was a bronze medalist at the 2021 Junior Worlds, and Ian Parker, who finished second at the Bill Farrel tournament. 70 kilos, again, there's no wrestler advancing to the final X. So you've got James Green, Ryan Deacon, Zane Rutherford, Tyler Berger, Bryce Andanian, Bryce Andanian, Ridge Lovett, who we know was advanced to the finals at the NCAAs from Nebraska, and then Anthony Ashnault, who finished second at the Bill Farrel tournament. And I think something that has to really and something that has to be noted, it's 65 kilos. That's the Olympic weight, Matthew, if I'm not mistaken. It's 57 and 65, correct?
Right.
Right. So then we're going to go to 74 kilos. And Matthew, are we surprised by who's in the final X?
Not really.
So then you've got Jason Nolf, Evan Wick, who we know from Cal Poly. He was the number one seed, but he was upset by Shane Griffith. Here's another familiar name that we know, Matthew, Keegan O'Toole.
Yep.
The undefeated freshman champion from Missouri. And then you have Quincy Monday, David Carr from the NCAAs. And then you also have Shane Griffith. So I think, you've got 65s and 74 weight class wrestlers trying to get in, at this. So that's not surprising. Josh Shields, the Bill Farrel champion. Here's another name that is not surprising that he would be, in the final X. And Matthew, there's another article which I'll go to in a moment, but apparently Burroughs is planning on competing at 79 kilos until 2024, when he will try to challenge for the 74 kilo weight class. And so I'm gonna assume that we will probably see a rematch of Dake versus Burroughs, don't you think?
Yeah, I believe they compete in that Flow Wrestling event.
Yes, I think they did. And so
was it Dake or Burroughs that came out on top?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll have to, if anybody wants to point that out for us from our viewers, but that's something I'll be more than happy to look up for next week as a topic. So here's something interesting that I think we're learning. Alex Derringer, Carter Strachey. So he had actually tried out for the World Team Trials last year, and even though he didn't make it all the way, he's still a two-time NCAA champion. Still got 2 years of eligibility left, so he's got a chance to really lead that Penn State team going into 2022 and 2023 seasons. Mekai Lewis, Hayden Hidley from NCAAs, and then Chance Marsteller, who was the Bill Farrel champion. So then you got 86 kilos, David Taylor, who was the world silver. Bo Nicol, obviously from NCAA fame. Zahid Valencia, who we know from Bosco and Arizona State. He is an NCAA champion. And then after his untimely exit from ASU, he's still out there making some noise on the freestyle scene. Pat Downey, Aaron Brooks was the NCAA champion. Parker Kekison, and then Miles Martin, who won the Bill Farrel. Matthew, if you're familiar, Jaden Cox, he kind of, I remember when he had, came out, he kind of, obviously from Missouri, and then he kind of just peaked, especially when he got to the I think it was the 2012 Olympics or the 2016 Olympics, where he took third there. And from there, he's been still going, which has been something to see. And then the world team trial placers: Colin Moore, Trent Hidley, Drew Foster, your junior world champion, Rocky Elam, Max Dean, NCAA champion, Jacob Warner, Stephen Buchanan, also the placers at NCAAs, and Nick Reenan, who was the Bill Farrel champion. And finally, as we're getting close to it, 97 kilos. So there doesn't seem to be that many wrestlers qualified for the world team trials at 97 kilos. I mean, you've got Kyle Snyder, who is, pretty much the dominant wrestler at that weight class. Then you've got Kyvan Gadsden, Mike Machiavello, Jay Alo, and then Joe Rao. 125 kilos. Now, there's actually quite a few guys here at this heavyweight bracket. You've got Gable Steveson. Then you've got Nick Jadowski.
Except Stevenson just retired.
Yeah, Stevenson just retired. So, likely we're not going to see this slot be filled come the world team trials.
Yeah, so it would be the finals of the qualifier tournament would be the
right. The wrestlers who advance to the finals will then just go to the final X. So whoever the finalists are in the challenge tournament, they wouldn't wrestle there. They just go to the final X later, a couple months from now. So Mason Paris, Anthony Nelson, Hayden Zilmer, Don Bradley, Anthony Cassiope, Colton Schultz, who was the runner-up at NCAAs, Jordan Wood, and Sarah Francisco. So with that being said, let's just take a quick look at Greco. So who qualifies for Greco? Well, the same criteria, when it comes to the Olympic trials and the world team trials. Basically, whoever placed top 4 at those. Then you also have, again, the U23 and the junior world medalists if they place. Now, here's where things get a little different. The top 5 from the NCAA D1 tournament will qualify for the Greco World Team Trials. And then the top 3 finishers from, and here's where it gets interesting, the D2 National Championships, the D3 National Championships, the NJCAA National Championships, and the NAIA Championships. So they really extend out that field quite a bit, probably because of the fact that, a lot of people want to compete in freestyle more than Greco. So, Matthew, you think, there's a real incentive, if you're wanting to try out Greco, to really try to place at these events, don't you think?
They're pretty much trying to get participation in there. So they're basically saying, hey, if you get these, then you'll get a chance. Because if you look at, we just looked at the freestyle qualifiers, and all these guys were, going to go freestyle. So that's like the top NCAA guys. So this is basically their way of saying, hey, if you're interested, why don't you come on out? So.
Right. And we'll go over that list really quickly in a moment, who's all qualify, whatever. And I think one of the things
little fun fact, Randy Couture, who was an Olympic alternate, and also, obviously he made more of a name for himself in the UFC, but he did the reason why he did Greco, he originally wanted to go out for the freestyle because, he went out for Army. The U.S. Army, not West Point, but he went out for the Army team, and due to a clerical error, he did Greco, and he was and I guess essentially he would have had to wait another year because of the paperwork. So it was just like, screw it, I'll go Greco, and then he was pretty successful. So.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, it's like, personally, I'd love to do Greco, but I need to lift a little bit of weight, lift some weights and stuff, and get a little bit more lose the belly fat before I want to get back into that. Because man, when you get thrown, you get thrown. It's just
Yeah, you remember doing those Greco and those tournaments?
Yeah, I remember. And it's either you're gonna get head and armed, or when the person's trying to really lift you up, man, you're gonna go flying. Especially if you're gonna get.
As I recall, I think I did pretty well.
Yeah.
But again, those Armenians, like,
oh gosh.
Yeah,
yes.
I think I told this story, but that one Lakewood tournament, and I go against the Armenian, and the guy, I'm like, oh no.
And wasn't he kind of an older guy too?
He was probably in his 30s.
Yeah, he was yeah, he was a bit on the older side, and it's like you're a college teenager just going out there and wrestling.
I think I was still in high school. I was just doing what I was doing Greco. So yeah, the guy gets my. I'm like, oh no. My life flashed before my eyes.
So just to kind of again, same thing here, Bill Farrel, except so for the US Open, it's only the now here's where it gets interesting. And again, like you're saying, they're trying to get participation in Greco. So the top 6 place finishers at the US Open, either Greco or freestyle, can qualify for the Greco team trials. Now, isn't that interesting?
They must be really desperate to get Greco participate. Even though they do field a whole team, it's like they must really be desperate.
Right? They're just trying to get, quality wrestlers. I mean, I think, and it really shows how, the U.S. doesn't really do great in Greco. It's all the Eastern and, the, like the Middle East countries, really are, going out there.
Dominant Greco nations.
Right. So anyway, and then you've got your Northeast Regional, and then, if you were a UWW event medalist, also qualifies. Apparently, was that in here? No. So that is technically, so if you participated at a UWW event and it looks like it applies for either style. If you were a medalist at a UWW sponsored event, you can qualify for the Greco team trials. So they really want people to come out for Greco, because I'd be interested to see what the participation ratio is for freestyle versus Greco, at least in the US. It's not a lot, and I think it's it ends up being fun for a lot of people when you do both styles. I think it's a good thing to have.
Something I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember if the world teams is specifically for the world championships, and I'm trying to remember if other like some of these other major tournaments that we're talking about, like the Go whatever it is Cup and the Siki Cup and all those other things. I'm trying to remember if they're open tournaments or if they might actually have a one nation cap, in which case I think the world team participant would get the
You're asking if people are going to these UWW events, is it just one wrestler per weight class per team is what you're asking?
Well, I'm sure that there are actual open tournaments, but as I recall, I think some of these tournaments, it is a one wrestler per nation cap, and it just goes
right, which is probably why you have this. Obviously, the world championships, this is you have it for that, you have this for that. But but probably you're right in some other events where if it's just an invitational instead of an open, that's what you're going to have.
But that's why you have alternates.
Now I know that the Dave Schultz tournament is an open tournament because I've seen where, like, you know, even like that tournament is pretty prestigious because, you know, you're going to have people from outside of the country participating in it. I know that Japan has gone in there quite a few times.
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't it being that's in the U.S., it's a mostly U.S. Attended tournament, but it's just that it's got international fame because obviously.
Yeah, it will have international competition. I've seen how, you know, I've seen where Japan has brought people in and they've brought more than one person per weight class. So anyway, so just to cap that off with who is qualified, you know, on let me see if I can find so I do have a tab open of who is qualified for the Greco. And I think, let me open up my tab really quick here. Yes, here we go. So this is as of last. Now they didn't update who's qualified for who qualified via the Bill Farrel. Actually, I think they did, but so let me go to Greco. So who do we have for Greco? You've got Max Norrie, who we saw won the Bill Farrel. Brady Coon, still in Dewfield. Jaden Cochran. So who is, and it looks like right now there's no one that's really qualified for the Final X in Greco. So it looks like it's kind of open, you know, it's an open field right now as far as that goes. And I'm, you know, not to use up too much time, you know, if we're going to go over and see, it's like, who is there anybody that we really recognize? If I'm looking at it right now, not really, you know, just people here and there.
I doubt that's our familiar Pat Smith.
Right, because everyone's competing in freestyle, so everyone will know the freestyle more than the Greco. But
up, there we go. There's 97.
So there is a Final X at 97. Giangelo Hancock, who was the world bronze medalist at the 2021 championships.
Sun-kissed kids.
Now, Matthew, actually, here is something that is here is a familiar name. Now, do you remember Adam Coon?
That name is definitely familiar.
So Adam Coon was the Michigan wrestler who was pretty much the challenger to Kyle Snyder during his run in the NCAAs. If you remember, Coon beat Snyder at the duel, I believe.
But then Snyder came back and won the championship.
Right. Snyder had to come back and won, and Snyder was giving up somewhere between 40 and 50 pounds on Coon. So I guess Coon had, used that to his advantage.
So Coon's a big boy.
Yeah, because Coon is a very big boy, yes. So, but he was the Olympic.
Qualified in 2 weights.
Now, I don't know if they're showing that for anybody, although Colton Schultz. Now, wasn't he, if I remember correctly, Colton Schultz? Maybe I got that. Okay, so Colton Schultz is here sitting at 125 kilo freestyle. And he's also sitting here at in the Greco. So it looks like he's qualified for two weight classes. Isn't that something? Now, is he going to take both of them? I don't know. hard to tell.
Is that
But
theoretically possible?
so there actually, a long time ago, there actually were people that competed in both styles in the Olympics. A long time ago.
Well, well, like, yeah, well, we'll just throw an example out there. When we went to the USA wrestling tournaments, we do freestyle and we do Greco. It's like that wasn't very.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was a natural thing to do.
Yeah, but that's at like a little tournament where it's like, the Grecos were always round robin. There weren't that many participants to begin with. And then depending on if you're doing the open freestyle or the junior freestyle, you're going to get thrown into like an 8-man bracket, or you're going to get thrown into another round robin. So, it's like something like that's not that easy, but it's like when you're talking about this kind of a stage, it's, it's kind of it's.
Yeah, you gotta concentrate on one or the other.
You'd have to be a really gifted athlete. Like,
Gifted and talented.
Yeah, let's face it. This person would have to be like the Michael Phelps of wrestling.
Right.
And when we talk about the greats, we talk about Farrell, and he was a Greco guy. We talk about Gable, primarily.
Yeah, they were single style wrestlers.
Yeah, they were single style wrestlers. Gable, John Smith, Kale. They're all single style wrestlers. So.
Yeah, I do know that there was a wrestler way back when who actually did compete in the Olympics in both styles. So I'll have to look up that wrestler, and it's definitely something. That's definitely a topic that we can, for like just phenomenal wrestlers, adding to our list of guys that we want to talk about.
Yeah, like the 6-time NCAA champion.
Right. So with that being said, so this is where we are at Greco, and then to kind of finish up our discussion about the World Team Trial Qualifiers so far. So what's going on with women?
Let's go over women's.
Yeah, so the women, basically the same thing here up to you've got again the the placers at the qualifiers. U23.
They changed the name of the women's only association again. They had another W in there.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, the NAIA championships, first and second place only, and then the first and second at the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. And I take it that that's going to be other than NAIA.
That's the because remember the NAIA having a championship is a very recent thing. That was the women's exclusive championship that had started before the NCAA, before the NAIA, before anybody else. And of course, what's it called? In NCAA wrestling, it's in the NCAA, it's an emerging sport. They don't even have a national championship yet.
Right. So that would mean that those programs would compete at the NCWWC.
Right. Though at the rate they're going, I think it's safe to say that there probably will be a.
Well, with the where programs are constantly being added, we see that probably every 2-3 months that a new program's being added. I would say, probably within
women's wrestling is going to make it out of the emerging sport program. There were some emerging sports. I've seen that the results of that program, some started and then never made it out of the program. They never met the 40 program minimum. Others got out and they're still programs to this day.
I'd say probably 2-3 years, we're going to see an NCAA championship. Now,
it'll probably just be one division because
right.
There's not.
That's where it's probably it's probably going to be one division because obviously Iowa is the top program when it comes to D1 that has women's wrestling, but then you're seeing a lot of D2 and D3 programs I think that have been emerging out of that. And then obviously, you are probably going to be seeing, again, NAIA, you've got NJCAA programs that are probably going to come up. The 3C2A, which is the California Community College, division. Right. They've got California is interesting because the community colleges, they act as their own kind of governing sports entity separate from the NJCAA. So, a lot of the schools are coming, they're coming out and announcing that they're going to be, officially sponsoring women's wrestling. Now, in recent years when they've had women participants at the 3C2A level, they've been kind of competing at the same time as the men's season, but they've been kind of wrestling each other, but it's not really been anything official. They've been having to go to some of the other women's events that have been going on throughout the country to get really any official results. But now, because the schools are starting to officially sponsor women's wrestling, I think you're probably going to see a 3C2A championship probably soon as well.
Let's face it. Any growth of the sport is like it doesn't matter what sex, it doesn't matter what division, it doesn't matter. Any growth of like region, like with Washington D.C. we're starting, it doesn't matter. Growth of the sport is good, regardless of the level.
And here's another thing.
Part of the sport grows, we all grow, we all benefit from it.
And another thing I'd like to point out, so it's been made known that I think as of right now, I think there are 3 colleges right now that sponsor women only for wrestling, which is interesting. Yeah.
Where?
I'll have to look it up. I saw it on, I think it was like it was either Wrestler Report or somewhere else that I saw that that there's those 3 schools sponsoring women only. And well, that's probably because they never had men to begin with.
Well, you can either that or it's been so long and there's just no resources like tech. Like Vanguard, when they restarted the program, it had been something like 40 years.
Yes, it'd been a long time since Vanguard came back. So
yeah, so you're essentially you're starting from scratch essentially. So if these colleges in question had a men's program, then it was just so long ago that you're starting from scratch. Like those mats have probably rotted away somewhere. Because let's face it, wrestling mats, if they're not taken care of, the materials and stuff like that, they rot.
So Matt, let's look at who's qualified and let's see if we're recognizing any names for the women's side. You and I we follow some of the big names here and there, but let's see who we got. Sarah Hildebrand.
Yeah, I was about to say we have a very, very familiar name right there.
Yeah, Sarah Hildebrand. She medaled, I believe, at the Olympics, and then she was a silver world medalist. And then you got Victoria Anthony, who I talked about. She came out to Santa Ana College and did a girls wrestling clinic. Yeah, so she's out there. And then, like I pointed out, she's also been doing some MMA or jiu-jitsu. I believe it's more jiu-jitsu than MMA that she's been doing. Actually, I got that wrong. Taxing. I've seen her doing jiu-jitsu, but I did see her doing an MMA match too. So she's been kind of all over the place.
She's exploring her options.
Yeah. So they actually have quite a few women qualified at 50 kilos because, just based on medalists and stuff, you've got these 5 and the non-world championship weights, the NCWWC and the NAIA placers are all qualified.
Life University.
Life University. I believe this particular Life University is actually in Georgia. I think we had covered that because you got Life Pacific, which is the one in San Dimas, but then you got Life University in Georgia.
Right. The last year's NAIA champion.
Right. Yeah, last year's NAIA champion. So, do we know anybody at 53 kilos? I'm not certain that I'm seeing anyone, Matthew. So, but again, they're all qualifiers and such.
The non-championship weight classes that I'm seeing are I'm seeing familiar universities, but I'm not. I don't know where the McKendree started a program. Huh.
So 55 kilos. You've got there's Jenna Burkett, who was the
U.S. Army.
Yeah, from U.S. Army. Marissa Gallegos sounds familiar. I'm not sure where I've seen her at.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar too. I can't remember where.
Has she been involved in MMA at all?
No.
No. That's probably another Marissa. So then they do have the qualifying, again, the top two placers from the
Southern Oregon, really.
NAIA. Yeah, Southern Oregon does have a university.
Oh, there's a familiar name. 57.
Okay, so
someone came back with a vengeance.
Yep, your teammate Helen Maroulis. Yeah, she won the world championships this time around. So she's really out to, make a statement.
I think she wants another gold medal.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Hey, if Coyote Icho can get 4 gold, 4 Olympic gold medals, Helen Maroulis definitely has a chance,
Wait, Coyote isn't the gal that Helen beat, right?
No, Saori Yoshida was the gal that Maroulis beat.
She beat Corellan's record.
Who?
The Coyote Icho.
Coyote Icho? Yeah, but then it was actually 3. Yes, but it was there was a Cuban Greco-Roman wrestler who actually did tie Coyote Icho last year at the Tokyo Olympics, and he tied it in Corellan's weight class.
Oh.
So yeah, in fact, here I will 4-time Greco-Roman Olympic champion. Yes, Mihain Lopez. Yes, he was the 4-time Greco-Roman champion. So
Cuba's also one of those places who has surprisingly good wrestling.
Yes, good. And I know that you had what's his name?
Yoel Romero.
Yeah, your boy Yoel Romero in the UFC.
Run for his money.
And he was viewed as I remember he was viewed as a rival of Kale. And
yeah, but he wanted to explore other options and make money, so he at a tournament in Germany, he said, "I want to defect."
So 59 kilos.
Who could blame him?
Yeah. 59 kilos, not really seeing anybody of note. Again, we're trying to get back into this, so not really following everything. Kayla Miracle advances to the final X at 62 kilos. Am I seeing anybody else out here? Not really. So then 65, you have another qualifier for final X, Forrest Molinari. And then 68 kilos,
Can you go back up a little bit?
Yes.
McKendree Bearcat WC. I didn't think, just from the name of it, it sounds like McKendree University might have a wrestling club attached to it.
Probably.
Because the Bearcats, that's their mascot. I didn't think they had a club attached to them. Huh.
So 68 kilos, we've got Tamara Menza-Stock. And just seeing a couple of women here and there. 72 kilos, you've got some girls qualified. 76 kilos, you've got Adeline Gray
Very familiar
directly
name.
in the final X. So with that being said, so from here on out, again, you got the Pan Ams coming up. Bill Farrell's already done. The U.S. Open, top 7 finishers, go to both women and men's freestyle. And then you've got the Northeast Regionals, and then any UWW event between October and May 1st, 2022. So with that being said, Matt, final thing that, Flo did an interesting thing about of the wrestlers qualified for Final X, who will we be seeing? They wrote an article because it seems that, there's some insight into, who is going to be declaring. Now, apparently, they have until May 4th to declare whether or not they're going to accept the spot in the Final X. If they don't, then, if they don't, I don't know what specifically happens. I would assume that if they suddenly decide that they want to attend, then they might have to wrestle through the challenge tournament. It's uncertain how that's supposed to be. But and then also, because of the way that the dates are set up, you've got June 3rd and you've got June 8th. Here's what I have to assume is going to happen is that they will probably split up the weight classes. I don't think they're because of the fact that it's going to be, I think there's 10 weight classes per style. I think in world class competition, you get it down to, what is it, 6 when you get to the Olympics?
Yeah.
So I guess that would make sense then if they're dividing it in 2 between, you're doing 15 weight classes the first week and then you're doing the other 15 weight classes the second week. I mean, I didn't realize that there were so many weight classes, but I guess they're, at least they're encouraging people to, compete, right?
This is pretty new, and it might have been because of that Olympic scare. Because we know a lot of sports that have, like, there's track events or swimming events. There's a lot of events that are in the world championships of other sports, but that are not in the Olympics. So this might be one of those things where they kind of realized, well, we need after almost not making it in 2020, we need to step this up in order to get participation. So they probably thought, you know what, let's add weight classes, and then that way,
Yeah, because I know that was a constant complaint from people, not just here in the U.S., but I think it was a constant complaint, the fact that there were only, I think in non-Olympic weight classes, I think it was 8 was, the max. 7, well, no, because it used to be 7-7-4. 7 each for freestyle and Greco, and then 4 for women.
And then it became 6-6-6.
Right, and then it became 6-6-6. And so, this, thing about, again, yeah, people were not happy with the weight classes, and then ILC was going to drop, wrestling. So then, great thing about our sport is when we have to get united, we can get united
very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. So here's what we have. So I don't know how this will work out, but so yeah, you've got Final X, the first one in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So I have to assume it's going to be at Oklahoma State because that's what's in Stillwater.
Yep.
And then the second one will be at Madison Square Garden. And I have to assume that they're probably basing these weight classes on which ones are the really popular ones to watch for. So probably you'd have, if like, for example, okay, so here's who Flo is assuming is going to accept. You've got Dayton Fix, you've got Kyle Dake. And so you know, Kyle Dake's a real big draw, so I think that's probably why they're putting his weight class at Madison Square Garden, which is, you know, you can fit a lot of people in Madison Square Garden, Matthew.
Not to mention he's from that. He's from the, you know, Cornell. You know, is that's essential. Cornell's in New York.
It's either in New York or really close to it.
It's in New England, so
Right.
essentially
It's an Ivy League school.
that's essentially his backyard.
They got fixed. You've got Dake. If we're scrolling down a bit, Burrows, you know, no surprise there that weight class would be at Madison Square Garden. 86 kilos. They're assuming David Taylor is going to declare. And then Kyle Snyder, obviously. I mean, I think Kyle, he wants to get that feel of Olympic gold back, especially since the last couple of times he's had to wrestle Ibrahim, the Russian. I think that's definitely something that he wants. You know, I think closing it out with a gold is probably something he definitely wants.
Of course, depending on how long this war lasts, Ibrahim may not be at the Worlds this year.
Oh, true. You've got Giangelo Hancock, who's the Greco 97 kilo wrestler. And then Hildebrand, 50 kilos women's. Burkett, 55 women's. Maroulis, obviously, she'll probably declare, which, you know, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I mean, she obviously wants that gold too.
He's from America, so that's
Kayla Miracle, Forrest Molinari. So here's who they think, you know, there's really, they don't know yet who might attend or whatnot. So Gilman, so looking like what I'm reading from this, it looks like Gilman actually was hurt. He's been hurt for a while. You know, he did wrestle at the Worlds, but he has not participated at all this year. So that's why they're assuming that he's questionable. But, you know, just because you haven't competed doesn't mean that you won't be at the, you know, final legs. I mean, you know, maybe he's just kind of saving himself up. Who knows? You know, maybe if he is nursing an injury, maybe he wants to make sure he's completely healed before declaring anything. You know, it's hard to say right now what that would be. And then you've also got so this one's interesting where they're talking about, you know, Jaden Cox. You know, he is qualified for 92, but you know, he did try out against Snyder last year, and he did lose. But, you know, they're speculating that, you know, he might try to move up to 97, and, you know, maybe it might be a permanent basis. Who knows? You know, I think sometimes it's, when you're wrestling at a certain weight, and then sometimes it gets too hard to cut. I mean, you and I, we've both been there where, you know, I was on my last legs trying to cut to 121 in my last tournament. And, you know, I'm sure it was hard for you, you know, when you were getting towards the end there, you know, wrestling at 125, right?
Yeah.
So, and then Tamira Mensah-Stock, she hasn't wrestled at all, but, you know, does that mean that she's not going to compete? You know, hard to say. But I don't know if that's really an indication that, you know, so if she's questionable, you know, I mean, but maybe she's maybe like Gilman, she might have an injury. Who knows? Hard to say. So then
there's the talk about her possibly joining WWE, going
the Gable route, Gable Stevenson route.
Yeah.
And speaking of Gable, so he is one of the people listed as not likely to go. You know, he is, you know, he left his shoes on the mat, and then he showed up at WrestleMania. So, you know, he's probably not going to be in there. But Adeline Gray, so, you know, she Olympic medal, world medalist, but she recently announced that she is pregnant. So,
What's for that happening?
yeah, so there's not really much that you can do about that given the timing and such, but so they're saying, well, okay, will she continue after she's had her child? And
Very interesting question. So here's so I'm gonna talk about this. So there have been multiple women in MMA who have had kids and then come back and competed. Juliana Pena's the best example. She became the UFC champion. So, but the question is, well, is wrestling that much of a different sport that it would affect somebody? I like. It would be interesting to see, just go back and see if any women who did well on the world level had a pregnancy and then tried to come back. I mean, we'll have to really see how that goes.
Yeah. So anyway, so that concludes our segment on the world team trials. So with that being said, Matthew, so to kind of close out, that's where we're at right now, and so that the next big event for qualifying for the world team trials is going to be the US Open. And I did find Flo did release a list of who has signed up so far for the US Open. And again, this list is very preliminary because it's a lot of people who have declared intention, but what you're going to have is that you're so many weeks out from the actual tournament, and as we get closer, you're going to see that list exponentially grow. I think sometimes those brackets can get as big as 48 to 64 wrestlers in a bracket.
Like, how many days is that tournament?
So the whole event itself takes place over 5 days. And so during that time, and I'm very, very sure that they, given, did I talk about how that I officiated at a freestyle event over the weekend?
You did.
Yeah.
Esperanza, right?
Yeah, Esperanza. And it goes by really quick.
I'm assuming this is not one. I'm assuming it wasn't just a standard USA wrestling tournament.
No, it was just, get the kids together, have them do the stuff. But, some of that stuff went really quick. Like I had one match where kid executed got in a double leg, lifted his opponent off the mat. And, in freestyle, you can just go wham them, on their backs, right? Because that's legal in freestyle.
Do they still do the 5-point end match slam, or did the rule change?
No, so no, that doesn't exist anymore.
That was
score 5 points. You can still score 5 points. It's just that you have to score 10-point advantage to get the tech. And again,
so you have to execute 2 of those essentially.
Right. But I got one kid who picks up his opponent after he gets a double leg, slams him on his back, and then the kid doesn't move. So hey, and in freestyle, you call the pin as soon as it happens. You're not looking for a silent 2 count like in folk style. So anyway, I tried going over the list. I brushed over it. I didn't really see anyone, noteworthy from California. I don't know.
Speaking with something weird, when I first came over here, I had never heard of the concept of a touch fall when we were in Japan. It's like that must have been some kind of weird US concept, because it's like I come over here and I hear the concept of a touch fall, I'm just like, that doesn't exist here. Or I was just like, that doesn't exist in freestyle wrestling.
Yeah.
It's like one touch. It's like, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but nowadays what happens, as soon as you touch, you can call a fall as long as the official and the ring judge agree. Again, you have to have 2 out of 3 judges agreeing that the fall happened. So anyway, so with that being said, have I seen? Okay, so I do see. There is a wrestler, David Sands, from California. Now, the reason why I know him is because I believe he wrestled for Mount San Antonio College in this last 3C2A season. So that's how I know who that wrestler is. Other than that, from California, I mean, I'm going over this list, and there's guys here and there. 74 is a pretty extensive list as far as U20, the U20 division is concerned. So it's pretty big in terms of the U20. Senior, not so much right now, but I'm sure that it'll get bigger again once we get the ball rolling and we get closer to it. And then obviously you'll have people that'll just walk up, they'll do a walk-in registration and all that. And that's where the tournament will really make its money, is the walk-ins, because they're paying, way more than if you had pre-registered, right?
Just to confirm, if you pre-register, do you get to weigh in the day before?
I think so, yes. You get to weigh in the day before. If you do a walk-in, I think you have to weigh in the day of. So there's obviously that advantage to pre-registering and weighing in the day before, because you can rest up a bit. And,
Yeah, I remember like the major events, they had day before weigh-ins, but obviously like the USA Wrestling tournaments, like they're not gonna have the ability to weigh in day before. And then for USA Wrestling tournament, why would you? The smaller, obviously.
Math, I think you and I, we should probably, again, you found your open room, I have my open room. We should really try to get ourselves, get back into training. And, I say, hey, man, let's go out and let's go to Vegas next year so we can compete. And heck, man, I'm open to competing in the seniors and the masters just to see how it is.
We'll see how it goes. I might want to go to Microcon next year.
Okay, so
explain that what that is in this podcast, but
so Math, with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and sign off. It's we've had a lot going on. It's been a pretty long work week and stuff, but hey, we're getting through, and have to see how more interesting stuff comes up. And for our audience, I think we're as we're building up to obviously the U.S. Open, and also the Cal Open, I think, is coming up. But I think we do want to start talking about some of the wrestlers of the past. I think we just want to see how they were, what kind of a world that they wrestled into. So I think we'll try to see which great wrestler we want to talk about in that time. So Matthew, again, where can our audience find us right now?
We are on, for our visual podcast, we're on YouTube and Rumble, and for the audio podcast, we're on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. New platforms to be added.
And we'll also be putting out. I do want to start putting out some stuff related to sumo wrestling, also to Japanese wrestling because of our connection to Japan. And I'll also be hoping to put out some stat videos about NCAAs, CIF tournaments and such. So hoping that you'll be enjoying those. And
also be looking for clips of our episodes, which are, it turns out, at least on YouTube, are possibly more successful than the actual podcast themselves.
So yeah, that's we wanna get those, get people in with those clips, because we do love wrestling, and sometimes we're a little bit out of it, but I think it's just two guys that want to talk about how things are in the wrestling world, especially with how things are right now. So anyway, Matthew, and then also I believe you are on MMAfreak.com.
MMA-freak.com.
So Matthew does do MMA coverage, so be sure to follow him there. He's also on Twitter at Matthew Salzer.
On Twitter and Instagram.
And also for the MMA, Matthew, what do they need to follow on Twitter for?
At MMA Freakout.
Okay, Matt. So with that being said, thanks as always for providing insight into how things are in the world of wrestling. And to our audience, we'll be seeing you very soon. Take care and have a great week.